Today MPs are returning to Westminster after that Christmas break, and already a group of over 200 cross-party MPs have written to the Prime Minister calling on her to introduce a mechanism to avoid the damage they believe would be caused by a no-deal Brexit. Well, rather worryingly for Mrs May, it includes over 20 of her own MPs. So with just 11 weeks until Britain leaves the EU, what lies in store for Theresa May's plan for Brexit? We're looking at the next 2 weeks being pivotal. Here to talk it over, Leave supporter MP Maria Caulfield and second referendum supporter MP Stephen Kinnock. Good morning to you both. Now, a lot of talk about reflection over the festive period, given the pause that's happened in these Brexit plans. I just wonder what you've both been reflecting on over the festive period, and have you changed your stance at all?
Well, I'm certainly going to wait to see what the Prime Minister brings back to Parliament this week. We heard yesterday when she was being interviewed that she's still looking to make amendments to the withdrawal agreement. And certainly for me and a number of my colleagues, it's the backstop within that withdrawal agreement that really is the problem. If that can be a change, if there could be a unilateral exit from that would give us some reassurances that we're not going to be trapped in that forever, should we ever need to use it, then there could be some compromise, but it would have to be something substantial and legally binding.
Stephen Kinnock, you're one of the signatories of this letter this morning that's been published, over 200 cross-party MPs calling for a mechanism to stop a no-deal Brexit. What do you mean by that? What do you want the Prime Minister to do?
Just one quick thing. I'm not actually supporting a second referendum. I'm backing the Norway option. I think we should leave the EU, but on far clearer and softer terms than what the Prime Minister is proposing. In terms of the amendment that's been tabled to the finance bill, what it effectively does is prevent the government from spending on no-deal preparations unless Parliament has approved a no-deal exit. And I think that's absolutely right. People who campaign to leave the EU campaign for Parliament to take back control. It would be a completely absurd situation if we basically hand control to Brussels and hand control to the government. Parliament is supposed to be sovereign in these negotiations. I think the other really big development today is that the Norway Plus group of MPs have produced an important new pamphlet written by Lucy Powell and Robert Halfon, which sets out what we call Common Market 2.0, basically saying we need to go back to a proper market-based relationship with the European Union. We come out of the political project, exactly. Rather than what happened after Maastricht, with a lot of political integration that hasn't always had the support of the British people. The fundamental problem with Theresa May's deal is that it's a load of fudge. It doesn't have any clarity about the political declaration on the future relationship, and our pamphlet that we've produced today provides that clarity. I really hope that MPs will sit up and take notice of it over the coming days.
Well, those are the two developments this morning. MPs are back and so are the protesters, forgive the noise. Maria Caulfield, two significant developments there that Stephen Kinnock was talking about. That letter signed by 200 cross-party MPs, and also the idea that's been mooted of this Commons Market 2.0. What do you make of those developments today?
Well, certainly, the colleagues who've signed that letter about no deal, they are the colleagues that actually voted through, Article 50, which didn't really say how we were going to leave, but it made it very clear that Parliament voted for us to leave the EU and that we will be leaving in March of this year. Certainly for me, the most irresponsible move over the last few days has been the amendments to the finance bill to block any funding for no-deal preparation. Not only does that hamper our negotiations, because Brussels will see that we won't be serious about leaving on a no-deal basis, and makes it harder actually to get a deal, whether it's the withdrawal agreement or a Norway-style option. If we don't have the preparations for no deal in place, then that weakens our negotiating hand. And actually a lot of the preparations for no deal will go hand in hand with what the technology and the infrastructure we need to have in place for whatever agreements there. I sit on the Northern Ireland Select Committee, and one of the key pieces of evidence we heard is that we haven't had the preparations responsible for some of the customs infrastructures and checks and balances needed, whether we leave on a deal or no deal basis. And to block that at this stage of the finance bill, I think is quite irresponsible.
Well, we're hearing that the meaningful vote will take place on the 15th of January, which is Tuesday of next week. A lot can happen between now and then. One of the ideas that's being kicked around today as everyone returns to Westminster is that the Prime Minister could delay the vote again, because there's so much to squeeze in now in just over a week. What do you think the likelihood of that would be?
I think that would be a deep betrayal of our democratic and parliamentary processes. It was an outrage that she did it on the 11th of December, and I think if she does it again, I'm afraid we start to turn government and parliament in this country into an international laughing stock. The total incompetence that the government has shown throughout these negotiations has already been quite humiliating for our country. A failure to set out a clear negotiating strategy, triggering Article 50 without having a clear plan in place, spending the last 2 years with the government and the cabinet fighting amongst themselves rather than actually reaching out in Parliament and forging a consensus. So it is time to stop this now. We've got to have the vote on Monday or Tuesday of next week. And when that vote is, when the Prime Minister's deal is rejected by Parliament, which it seems it will be, the government has a moral duty to have a plan B in place that can command a cross-party majority. That plan B is Common Market 2.0 that we set out in our pamphlet today.
OK, Maria Corville and Stephen Kinnock, thank you very much for your time this morning.